Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are doing great. I am going to start the recording now. It's 9:03 in the morning here in the United States. So I hope you are doing well. How are you doing, Rodas?
I'm doing good, miss. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you very much for being here today. I guess it's probably gonna be just the two of us, but as always, I'm going to record the presentation for the other students that by any chance cannot attend, and they can actually see the presentation later. Today, we are basically reviewing chapter 5 of the book, that is everything regarding labor relation and collective bargaining. This is everything that is regarding unions, contracts, registrations, and unions. So it is very important if by any chance you work in a company that is unionized and you are part of the union, or by any chance you're considering being in the union. Um, a lot of companies do not like unions, but in a way, it's part of the freedom of labor. If the employees can unionize and they all agree to it and they reach an agreement, they basically can generate that. It was something very famous in the 50s and 60s around the world, actually, during the time of more factory working an assembling line type of things. Nowadays, um, they really know that common, and that's because a lot of companies have expanded very good services to the employees, so the employees do not see the need for it. But in general term, they do still exist. They're very strong, and they do wield a lot of power at the government level. So it is something important to review, even if it is not something that we will face as an aspect, because a lot of the labor policies that we have today in human resources, regulations, freedom of speech at work, protection, and things like that, they have happened and policies have been developed because of the power of unions. So that is actually one of the good reasons for covering this information today. So the whole purpose of this chapter, for example, is to provide a little bit of more information about the union. I reduced some of the information because at the beginning it talks a lot about history of the union in the United States. And I know that we are an international university and we have students from all different places. So I didn't want to bore you a lot with a lot of the nitty gritty history in the United States. But it is recommended, and I do encourage you to, on your free time, to read a little bit about it uh, in in your country, because sometimes the policies and regulations are a little bit different as well. But it's a good point to start knowing about how the history happened here. um, there is also something that is called like unfair union practices. That is everything about the abuse and the control. Here in the United States, when unions started in the 40s and the 50s, there was a lot of control mafia around there, and it became more like a type of organization, type of say, controlling everything, sales, alcohol, um, so it got a little bit out of control at the beginning. So we're talking about something that is very important to cover in the aspects of unions is everything about grievance and procedures. The employees that are part of unions and they pay these dues to the union organization on a monthly basis. They have basically legal services, counseling services, protection of possession, protections of grievance and complaint. So they are very well representative in that end. So It is important to a lot of people like that, especially if you work in a company and you do not make a lot of money. So when you face these legal issues with the companies, a lot of people they just give up and quit because literally they cannot afford to file a complaint or to file a lawsuit for the legal expenses. When you're part of the union takes care of all of that. So if we covered a little bit about the history of union, basically in the United States, this part is about United States. Actually, around 14 million people in the United States are unionized. This goes covered into education, assembling line companies, um, actually employees of the post office, employees of different companies like that, they tend to be more unionized. The car industry, uh, all those type of companies like that, they tend to be have a strong union presence. um, then we're talking about, I don't really know for what reason, uh, more men geared towards being unionized than women, but in general sense, there is a big number of both of them as part of unions and company. Then they tend to unionize. The purpose of these unions are because the employees feel that they are stronger together, which is the mentality of how good teamwork should be, for example. So what they think about it is that if I'm not happy, but it's just me complaining, nobody's gonna listen to me. But if I have 10 or 15 people with me complaining about the same thing, then basically they are going to listen to me, and it is going to be easier for them to help me or to change or to modify whatever it is that you're complaining about it. So the main purpose is basically that is more for protection, more for communication purposes, more for like listening to me, like be aware that I'm here type of thing. And that I should matter as an employee, and I should be protected as an employee, for example. So this is what it mentions more about, is the paying attention to the engagement. So a lot of employees are frustrated because the companies do not listen to them, they do not listen to what they have to say, they feel that they are completely ignored. So they believe that actually if they become part of the union, then their work environment, their services, the benefits get improved and they're more protected. One of the reasons, the main reason for unions is that if you are part of a union, it's actually very difficult that a company can let you off. So this is one of the main reasons why company try to bargain some type of agreement with the employees without unionizing, because they lose the power of terminating employees when they feel like it or they need to or whatever. The advantage of unions, like you say here, is that, believe it or not, for example, the work schedule that we might follow, the standards of salary, the standardization of breaks, all of that, if you go back in history, it's part of what the union has created. Before, we didn't have like a work schedule, so a lot of companies abuse, a lot of people used to work 10, 12 hours a day. um, So all of this work schedule, or what is a regular work schedule, what is the standard time, how can it be divided, what is worth it to do, give 1 hour from lunch, 45 minutes for lunch, should we give break, shouldn't we give break, all of that. Sometimes we tend to ignore that. And nowadays, even if we're not part of the union, even if a company doesn't have a union, it's all that, like the work schedule that we might even follow now at our workplaces, is because of that, because some time ago these unions fought for that, and these unions were interested in having a better environment, a better work environment, safer work environment, and all of that, when actually didn't even exist before. So we go into, for example, talking about unions. It is important to remember that we have something that is called unfair union practices or employee practices, which are basically connected to the standard labor laws that they have to be all employees have to follow. So sometimes unions tend to abuse the control that they have, and they bargaining for one thing and then they actually do something completely different. So the main reason for that is that we have to recognize that even though they might have the power, they do have to follow certain rules, and the companies do have the right to fight legally in court against unions for illegal things that they are using, or they're abusing, or they're taking advantage of maybe policies and regulations within the organization. So here is a little bit of history about, like, laws, labor laws, that they modify the encouragement and detailed regulations of the unfair treaty. Union have the control to basically tell the owner of the company or their board of trustees what actually they can do with the employees and they cannot do. But what companies also have to realize is that even though unions have a lot of power, they own the business. So it becomes more like a legal battle, and sometimes it gets really, 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 could get really, really expensive, really expensive. But at least basically like this, they have the opportunity to see if they can reach an agreement that benefits everybody. So here we're showing you, you can see some type of history between the 30s, um, in the purpose of what is called the contracts, limited of contracts, uh, secrets, secret elections that they did, all of this. And due to that, we created, in the country, we created acts and policies to control the unions, because they were used to work like, they were like outlaws type of thing. So based on that, now that they have the freedom of creating the unions, then the government have to be protected. So they created laws that they call, for example, the Norris LaGuardian, that is basically monitors everything that is the collecting and bargaining, the contracts. What is called yellow dog contracts, it's shady contracts that they want to do to gain more money. So it controls all of that. So, for example, if you're building a company, you buy a piece of land and you're building a hotel, members of the union can come and harass you to tell you to hire this contract or hire this other company or hire whatever to build your hotel. That is not, that is illegal. So this statement protects that. Then the limited of course, is basically because the union contracts were very, very open, and basically they could file a lawsuit for anything, and they can drag for times, and they can go back and readjust and everything. So this protects the level of order. Everything that is limit, everything has an expiration. So if you think that we did something wrong and you don't act upon quickly through the union member, and then the union member doesn't try to solve it, or it takes too long to solve it, then the company is in the clear type of thing. And then under the national labor relations, it protects everything that is unfair labor practices. Unfair labor practices is basically, if you can consider this, is more like a abuse, because I'm a member of the union, I can do whatever I want and you don't touch me, and I can come here at any time and I can leave at any time. And that is not the case whatsoever. So it protects the company in that sense. Also, about the secret ballot, is that unions have to have elections when they actually reach in a bargaining agreement on a yearly basis. If they have a contract with the company and they want to renew it and they want to make changes, they have to vote. They have to within the members to make sure that everybody agrees to the change. So when top members of the union or a stronger small group of the union want something, sometimes they do illegal balloting or secret balloting, and then they go to the company and say, no, everybody voted for this, when actually that wasn't the case. So employees get protected like that, employers get protected like that, just to make sure that companies don't abuse in anything whatsoever that it is over the control. So for example, when I in the on the other one that I was mentioning about the Warner Acts is very, very important, because it actually helps the employer would interfere on the right of self-organization. So if by any chance the unions are taking too long and the unions are abusing of the work schedule to take the employees out of the working time to just meet and meet and meet, that is actually abuse. That is interfere of right of self-organization. So the companies can complain about that as well. So that's what a lot of unions have to create their own schedules, meet after hours, read some type of agreement, so maybe with permission of the owners of the company, but all of that has to be in writing and has to be approved by both parties at the same time. Something that it also is controlled is about the discrimination, and it is that the companies have to treat everybody equal, and so they have to control that, because the unions always want their employees to be first. This employee is unionized, so this person deserves more than salary increase than the other one. Or when the company opens a position, the union can fight for hiring this person because this person is part of the union, when actually maybe that person doesn't even have the skills that they need for the position. So all of this, it protects also in that. Um, what they talk here about unfair practice of charges is because sometimes the unions have a lot of different fees, and basically part of that can be agreed in advance to the company to basically deduct the money out of their paycheck and transfer part of that portion to the union account. All of that is agreed in advance. So it's also responsibility of the company to protect the employees, the way that the union doesn't start charging for things that they're not supposed to, or asking for more money from each of the members or things like that. And then refuse of bargaining collectively, it's basically that employees have the right to basically saying, no, this is how we're going to do things, and reach some type of agreement. So in other words, It the union voice is not the law of the land. The employees have the right to refute whatever the union wants, and they have the right to basically, in all aspects, reach always a type of an agreement. And this act that is called the Taft-Hartley Act is for the management relations. Is everything about, for example, the protection of unfair union labor practices. So the companies can file a complaint to the Department of Labor when they see union members doing something wrong, or the entire organization doing something wrong, or that they think that the union is abusing in whatever way, and the company does not have the right, and they cannot support that whatever action they're doing. So they are protected, and they can complain about that. The other ones is also the employees, the rights that the members of the unions have. Sometimes they're different than the company has, but both of them have to be followed by the employee. So, for example, if the company has 1 hour lunch, then basically the union has to respect that, and they have to basically inform those policies as well. So if they decide to do certain work schedule, the union has to help the company that the employees are bound by that work schedule and that they work during those hours. So it has to reach a lot of compromise. It is very expensive. It takes a lot of years for a company to actually reach a comfortable agreement with an employer. Legal hours, agreement hours, and and at the end, sometimes neither party is 100% happy about the result of everything that happened. But unfortunately, they have the right to do this. So that's what, when the employers have to protect themselves, like for example, when it says here about the discrimination, the bargaining in good faith, all of that, because being unionized is actually a choice, is not an obligation. So even though a company might have a union, not all the employees are part of a union. So it is the responsibility of the company to protect those employees that are not unionized, that they are able to get the same services, the same benefits, the same salary increases, the same opportunities of um, uh, employment training or promotions or things like that. And that's when the situation becomes really, really blurry about it. Um, Something that it is important for the employees is that unions may not restrain or coerce an employee. So the employees that are not unionized, or even if they are unionized, the unions do not have the employee to tailor them and tell them this is what you're going to do, or this is what you're going to say, or this is how you're going to act. Because sometimes even members of the unions, they could be against whatever changes the union want. They think that whatever the company is doing is okay. So even though they're part of the union, they can go against what a very few members of the unions want. So that it is. So even though they're part of the union or they're not, they can actually go against whatever the union is saying. Um, Also bribery, blackmailing, all of that, which is sometimes very standard in how unions work. Employees are protected towards all of that, and even members of the union can actually report information to the government or report information to the director of human resources. So for us, for example, like I say, remember since the beginning, I told you that the idea of the class is considering being a supervisor. It doesn't have to be a director of human resources, but being a supervisor. So that is the reason why this is important, because if you work as a director of organization, or you are a director of human resources and you work in a company, um, that has a union, you have to be aware of how to handle the employees that are unionized. You have to be aware of how the procedures are taking place and investigations or complaints are taking place, because sometimes they're complaining but they're not alone. They are basically backed up by the president of the union or the lawyer of the union. So it's very, very important to be aware of it. That's what they create, like information of injunctions, and times for complaints and extensions and all of that, because that is the only way that the company can really protect itself for long-term legal battles and a lot of expenses. um, this other act, which is the Landron Griffin Act, is more related with like disclosure and regulation. So is they need to have policies, they need to have procedures, they need to follow them. They need to have information about clear description of how they're gonna do their elections, how they're going to do nominate members. Everything that is regarding fees have to be written down and cannot be changed without the approval of every single member of the organizations. So all the policies that the union wants to go by it is like when you get hired by a company and they give you an employee, what they call an employee handbook, let's say it that way. If you become part of the union, they have to give you a handbook with all the information, the bill of rights, the regulation, the fees, and everything. Um, so it is important to be aware of that. And as a director of human resources, it is important to have a copy of that. And the union member can share that with the directors or the director of human resources, because it is important to be aware of all the expectations of the union members. So now when we talk about the elections, it basically goes into what it is: the initial contract, the labor relation, the unions, and so basically this is an a step of everything they do. So the first thing is the initial contract, which is everything given the employee the information of the policies, the information on how they can be protected, what is the purpose, um, what they can do for the employee in terms of like an accident or a situation or a complaint that they follow. And all of this, when they talk about public pressure, it basically provides information to the employee that they're not forced to be in part of the union, and that everything is done as a free will. So if the employee decides to be part of the union, is because they are interested on doing it, not because anybody's forcing them, another coworker, another employee, or somebody, a union member. So this is, for example, this is actually an image that you will find in the book. It is basically information about an example of the authorization card, and the authorization card is basically um, that the employee is saying that yes, that I am interested on being part of the union, and this is me, and this is my address, and this and everything. So they're basically using this card to saying I am registering, and this goes into the company's record, and it's what I was telling you about, like the salary deductions and the fees that they have to pay. So basically, by using this authorization, they are authorizing for like payroll deductions and all of those things. Um, the other aspect of the election is what is called the hall of hearing. It is important to have a lot of evidence for this process. and it's basically to determine whether a group of co-workers um, they actually are interested in being unionized. So in order for a group of employees to request a union or plan to be part of a union and establish a union in a certain company, for example, they have to have a lot of proof. They have to have a lot of support. They have to have even a majority or percentage of employees. So, for example, eh, 60, 70% of the employees, either of a certain field within the company, for example, should be interested in being unionized. So, in other words, two, three people, four people, nothing. Just go to human resources and file a complaint about whatever you're not happy, but you don't have enough manpower to be able to say that the company is going to authorize you to start going in a legal review to authorize a union in the company. So that is one of the most important aspects, is step number three. And then basically, once the company says, okay, you have enough people, I think basically, yes, under labor law policies, you can have a union. Then basically, now the union has to start a campaign because they now need to start collecting the votes. It's one thing that they ask me, hey, do you like a union? And then as an employee, I can say, well, I have considered it, I don't know, this, that, whatever. But then when the union start the process of voting is when it changed. So talking about the percentage that I just explained to you, let's say in an assembly line, um, 100% of the employees, 80% that they ask, they say, well, maybe yes, I will consider it, blah, blah, blah. But that's just verbal, unofficial communication, a conversation right there while you have a cup of coffee. But the action and the proof is in the voting process. If they start a campaign and they start the efforts of voting, and from the 80% of the employees, then they go down to 40%. So actually 80%, yes, maybe I will consider, but only 40 at the end say, I want to be part of the union. Then basically is not enough to actually approve the union in the company. So that's what this fourth step is so important, because now is basically what they call of action. Oh, you told me this, you told me that. So now prove to me that you're interested. Both. Say actually that you say that you are interested, and basically uh, here that also this is part of the book, it shows you an example of how they can do the secret ballot. They can vote for employees. So employees actually, even though they're part of the department, that's what the employees can be neutral, and employees say, I'm not gonna vote, I'm not interested. Or just to keep everybody happy, the employee can vote, so you have 100% of the employees voting to keep everybody happy. But then basically when the employees are completing the ballot, the employees say no. And that's it. So at the end, when the results of the voting are revealed and count, and the votes count, if there is not enough votes, then basically means that there is not enough interest from the union. So I mean to be unionized, I'm sorry. So that basically that's the end of the story. But because the company knows that the few employees that are asking for the union might start rattling things out and start talking and start gossiping around, then basically the company can as a what they call well-being behavior, like they are interested, can reach some type of agreement and can talk to the employees and say, well, tell me, why do you want a union? Are you not happy with the schedule? Are you not happy with the salary? So sometimes with our union, they can reach some type of agreement and the company can improve whatever it is the employees are talking about. So sometimes it's more becomes more a general discussion of the topic that actually not having the need of unionizing or anything like that. So we're talking about here is that it provides the information about how unions can collect votes. They can actually talk to the employees. They can do person-on-person campaign. So basically, kind of like the same thing that any politician does nowadays. They do advertising. They talk to the employees. They provide information to the employees. So, like that, employees can get educated about the purpose of the union, what they want, what they're after, by doing it in a normal way. No harassing, no forcing, no threatening the people, no nothing. Just providing information, doing an entire campaign, and basically making sure that everything is it's do the right way. So here, when it talks here about supervisor roles, is because remember that you have this group of employees that in a way they're like instigating the peace within the company, talking everywhere. We want a union, we should be unionizing. So they start no brainwashing the other employees, but they start basically instigating and interrupting things. So it is very important that the supervisors get involved in all of this and they are aware, they know that the peoples that are campaigning they're doing the right way. They have to protect the employees, make sure that they're not instigation or gossiping or lying or anything like that, because regardless of what the supervisor is and and is there to protect the employees, everybody in the department, the main duty is to protect the company. So they have to be aware if people are lying about the company, people are trying to recruit members by lying and saying things that are not true. So it is important to try to control the whole process the right way, to make it fair, to make it legal, and to actually protect everybody. So regarding the literature of solicitation of union, it is employer to be aware. As an employer, it is important to be aware of what we can do and what we cannot do. So they cannot basically start reaching out to people during working hours, affecting their breaks, their lunch break, harassing them while their people are outside, or anything like that. So it is important that as a supervisors they are aware of all of this, because if they see the persons doing all of this, they could actually file a complaint and the employee can get reprimanded. And if the action continue, the advantage that the union is not set up, the employee can even get let off for interrupting everybody else's work. So this is very important to know how to do the campaign, how to recruit employees to be part of the union. And as a supervisors, we have to protect that. We have to protect the 1 hour of lunch from the employees. We have to protect their breaks. We have to protect their work schedule and all of that. So it's something important that it's good to know about unions is the legal process uh, in order to determine the rights that they have. So the law grants employees the right to terminate their relationship with the union without any litigations or any back grudges, let's say it that way. So the way you get recruited and you become member of the union, at any time you can actually leave the union as well. And you can just say, you know what, I'm just leaving, I'm tired of this. This is too much drama. This is not what I signed up for. You guys don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to be part of this anymore. and the employee cannot be harassed. The employee has to be protected at all times, and in good faith they can just walk away whenever they want to. So it is important in the aspect of what is called collecting and bargaining. Collecting and bargaining is basically when you sit down and you talk, the managers, the directors, the board of trustees, the owner of the company, the president, the VP, all of that, they sit down and basically talk everything that they want to be as part of the union regulations. So why do you want the union in the first place? So the members say, we want the union because your salaries are too low in comparison with other companies. We're making $4 less or whatever it is. So all those points that the union are saying, the president, the board of trustees, whatever it is, they're taking a note of that. So if they want to because of the wages or the hours or benefits, or they are fighting for benefits because the company is not offering, for example, health insurance or whatever, that's what it is, the collecting and bargaining. You tell me, why do you want the union? Why are you complaining? And where are you able to settle? So if the union wants $10 salary increase per hour, and the company of course cannot afford the 10 more dollars per hour for 100 employees, that's when the collecting and bargaining is on, reaching some type of agreement, reasonable efforts, reaching an agreement that will help them to have to calm the waters, and that everybody is happy. Because if the union start pushing for too much, and the company as an owner, presidents, vice president, all administrators don't protect themselves, then the company actually can take the I'm sorry, the union can actually take the company to bankruptcy, because they ask for so much. And I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want the other one, and I want insurance, and I want $10 more per hour, and I want 3 weeks of vacation instead of two, whatever it is they're asking for. All of that are expenses that the company has to cover. And if the company doesn't have the budget, then basically the company is going to start losing revenue, and now they're stuck with a bunch of employees that they cannot offer all the services, because basically the union since the beginning started asking for things that the company in reality couldn't afford. So sometimes even before you're waiting for the power of the union, actually the company is important to reveal clearly the finances to the company. So it's better to basically before the union takes place, to make them realize that it's not that you just don't want to give them the service of the service, or a $10 increase, or the best health insurance or whatever, but actually your company doesn't have the revenue to do all of that. So part of the collecting and bargaining, that's where it is important, considering all the costs, considering everything. And at the same time, you can even consider about mandatory items are voluntary items. So they're things that members are required to do within the company, and they're things that basically they can still voluntarily do. They can say, "Ah, okay, so don't do this for me," or "I don't want to do this," or "don't consider me for whatever." So the idea is to help in a way the same company, so the union can be established. They can create some items that everybody's happy about it, and that the company is going to be able to afford. So for example, about voluntary items, it's like they're asking for everything. Let's say they're asking for medical insurance and dental insurance and vision insurance and life insurance and all of that, and the company cannot cover all of that. So maybe part of the bargaining company, they say, okay, so you get a better price as a company for all the employees. You take out of our paycheck part of the salary for medical, for example, for medical and dental, and we will pay out of pocket. In a volunteer item, we will pay for vision, and we will pay for this, and we will pay for that. So that's what is called volunteer items. It's not that they're gonna do something for free. No, it's that they're willing to compromise in order to reach, and they know that the company has the power to do it. Why? Because if, for example, you go on your own to an insurance company to buy health insurance, they're going to give you this price. But if you go on a group of 15, 20, 30, they're going to give you a discount. So the people still have the need. The people are covering their needs on their own. But because they're taking advantage of the company power as a group, then basically it becomes cheaper. So they're willing to do that. So in everything that is mediation and strikes and everything, that is also very, very important for union regulations. So how they're gonna do it, why are they gonna do it, why the purpose of a striking, they do have, and actually anybody in any company has the right to strike, have the right to complain, have the rights to call up on actions. So basically saying, we're going to complain about this. And they can go and get signatures and send a letter to the president, or they can go and stand outside with signs. They have the right to do this. And actually, they don't have to be unionized to do that. But as a part of a member of a union, then basically strikes can actually affect the company, because if you have a union where you have 80% of the employees are part of the union, and all 80% go on strike at the same time, your company will shut down. So it is important to try it as much as possible to always, if you have a union, to reach some type of compromise way even before the things get out of control the way that it doesn't affect your business. So now we're basically going into the union aspect. So what I was telling you at the beginning of the class of how things were in the 40s and the 50s, and now how things unions can change. Sometimes we don't hear about it, and we think that they really disappeared, but they actually didn't. The thing is that unions nowadays, like even us in a regular life, they basically are taking advantage of technology to do things. So a lot of unions are not forcing the employees for meeting schedules like it happened in the past, or a space within the company to meet. And they're not even doing it because now basically the same way we're using this technology now to run the class, they can do the same thing. So they're transforming more into that aspect of technology, doing Zoom meetings, flyers, creating pages on Facebook, sharing quickly information that way with the members of the union. So they're taking advantage of all these tools that we have nowadays, the internet, getting information quickly, getting actually even support for members um, of other unions, if they're trying to change, if they are going through a bargaining process and they do not have the skills, so they are requesting for something new. So now they're taking the advantage of the internet to do all of those aspects, to communicate, to provide information, to disseminate information to the members, and at the same time to get knowledge about whatever it is they're doing. Um, Something about what we talk about, the contracts in unions, they basically um, can be really long and can be really extensive depending on everything that the union is asking for. And but what it is important is that everything that the union wants, it's written down in that contract. And also the employer has the right within the contract to incorporate information about their policies as well. So within that union contract, they also have their policies, their rules, their regulations spell out. So in advance, the union member know if you become a member of the union, and this is how the union is going to protect you, then remember this and this and this. You are also bound by this and this policies of the company as an employee of the company. So, because sometimes people think that once they become member of the union, that nothing applies to them. This doesn't apply to me anymore, when actually it is not the case whatsoever. So it is very important to be aware of all of that and know that they do have rights and that they have to follow the regulations of the company for that. Um, I wanted to show you something that I was looking for that will complement this class, and I don't know why I was looking for the video in my computer and um, I cannot find it. So I'm trying to see by the end of the class I can show you. It's a very short video that I found on YouTube, and it was about the unions in general. Like, do labor unions still matter? Because a lot of people think that how technology has changed, how the labor has changed, how the fact that a lot of people are working from home, people are thinking this is not relevant anymore. Like, unions are not relevant anymore. But actually, what we have proved through times and research and investigations is that basically unions matter, and there are actually certain jobs and certain regions in the United States, and maybe around the country, especially if they're like industry type, assembling line, a factory. Those are the type of employees that would be more interested in being unionized. Eh, so, for example, McDonald employees, those type of words like that. Sometimes, basically, those are people that want the protection of a union and they still unionize. So, I think whether I think that as long as corporation exists, as long as we are relying on somebody else to cover our needs, so that we don't own our own business, we work for somebody else. There is always the need for that. It doesn't mean that everybody's gonna become a member of the union, but it is important to know that the opportunity is there if by any chance they think that they think that it is required. So I found the video and I wanted to, once we finish here, I'll be able to show you that as a complement of what we've been talking about, because the presentation is almost done. So this last little part of the chapter is about the grievance procedures. And what we're talking about the grievance procedures is everything about what what it happens when you are already member of a union and you want to file a complaint about a complaint that you're facing, and about complaint issues with a coworker, issues with a supervisor. So it is not doing the whole entire dispute as a union per se with the president or director or the supervisor, but you as a member of a union. I am member of a union. I need your protection. I need your assistance. I want to complain about this. How you can help me? So basically, it is a special process that they have to follow, because as a member of the union, uh, everything becomes legal in a way. The lawyer always can be there. The lawyer can always protect you, and the lawyer can be present in all the meetings that you request. So it is important in that end, because it's one thing when you are complaining and you go to your supervisor and you send a letter or you meet with a representative of human resources to try to protect something. In the contrary, with unions, everything is documented, everything is legalized, everything is like there are lawyers in the middle and the president of the union and vice president of the union. So the process is completely different. But the best way that a supervisor, me as a supervisor, can handle a complaint or a grievance from a member that is part of the union is basically making sure that I am following the company's policies first. What it is important for the company, what are the requirements, what are, so for example, let's say a member of the union is filing a sexual harassment complaint. The fact that it is a member of the union, the investigation is not going to be different and is not going to change. Uh, Basically, you are filing a sexual harassment complaint like anybody else in the company has the right to file the complaint. So the fact that you are a member of the union, I'm not going to treat you differently, or I am going to believe more you than somebody else that you have been harassed. No, it's just the fact that it is a member of the union. We as supervisors have to be very careful and make sure that all the procedures are followed, that everything is properly documented, and that their records of everything that the employee is saying, and including proper investigation. That is what it is required by the union, and it is what the supervisor, we as supervisor, have to be aware of it. So it's not that they're treated differently, it's that the union requires a special type of investigation or a special additional process of documentation, and we as supervisor have to be aware of that. So it is important to consider, for example, as a manager, there are certain tools that managers can be aware of it to make uh, the process of investigation of any complaint smoothly, and that it works out well for everybody. So it is very important that we are aware of the grievance. The grievance is properly documented. Sit down, and even though you are telling me, you're gonna sit down and write the whole thing of what you think that the complaint is all about. And if the employee has proofs, it's even better because all of that becomes a part of the grievance package. Eh, it is important to be aware of all the facts. So people, when they people writing, they tell to write as a story, like telling you as a story. So as part of the supervisor, it's very important to get that story and be able to extract the facts from that. That is basically because remember that we are affecting somebody's livelihood. Somebody in the company is going to be investigated, and depending on the result might even get fired, and depending if the situation is really big, it could be legal action involved or even jail. So as a supervisor, we have to be very, very careful about the facts, because we are affecting somebody's life, somebody's livelihood, somebody's possession, somebody's job, and everything. So we have to make sure that the facts are clear. And um, when they say about the elimination of the root of the cause of the problem, is that what we need to make sure is that we 100% are convinced that there is a problem, that after we read this story and we extract all the facts, we are able to see that yes, in fact, there is something going on. So we make sure that for a fact, yes, it does require an investigation. So it is important to right there follow the regular procedures of the organization, not the union. So that comes into point 4. I'm sorry, what it says here. Normally, the standards of human resources says everybody has the right to complain, yes, but the person that is being accused also has the right to be heard. So, as director, as supervisor, or director of human resources, we have to hear both sides of the stories at all times. And both sides of the story have to be very well documented. So, not just because you are a member of the union, I'm going to believe you. No, more than ever is when a proper investigation uh, has to be followed. So, the once the implementation, the package is complete, that's when the implementation of the decision and the review of the case takes place. And if by any chance they have to be lawyers involved, then basically reach an agreement. Uh, a lot of companies, unfortunately, were using sexual harassment. We're using sexual harassment as an example as long as a sexual act has not taken place in the company, in the building, in the parking lot, in whatever that is considered the company's place, then basically an official jail time or legal action cannot take in place. If it happens outside, then basically it becomes a civil case. It's completely different, but the company cannot request legal action because of something that happened outside. So if you're able to prove that something happened inside with the company grounds, then basically it's different. If no, then the maximum that you can do, if basically you are able to confirm that the sexual harassment took place, is basically then you decide either if you reprimand the employee, if it wasn't that big of a deal, but unfortunately, sexual harassment most of the time are big deals. If you require retraining or relocation of the employee, or basically uh, terminate the employment contract and just firing the employee. So that's what it is important to basically document everything properly, because we need to know what we have the right as a company to do to protect that employee, and what it becomes a civil case, even if it was a company party outside in a hotel or something like that. As long as it is not property, then it becomes more a civil case. So it is important to be aware of all of that. Then this is basically the last part of the summary of chapter 15 for everything that is the union. So it is everything that is in comparison of what it is today, the union movement today and tomorrow. Like, what do they do now? What is the purpose? What it is in the future? So in reality, what we have to say is that basically nowadays, membership of unions have gone down. Unions still exist. Unions, there is a lot of companies that has them, but unions are not as strong as what they used to be in the 30s, in the 40s, and even in the 50s. And then what it has changed is that they try to basically organize, they try to have the government support them, and they do have tried to legalize a lot of the situations to stay afloat. But even though they have done all of these things, the bottom line is that the only way that unions are strong is by head counts, by members. The more members a union has, the stronger the union is. So unions are losing that ground. So unions are changing their approach. So, for example, when I was telling you about, let's use car factories, um, companies that build cars, most of these companies are unionized, but they're losing so many members that actually unions are becoming more national. So, for example, by becoming more nationals, then unions can have people that work in Toyota and people that work in Ford and people that work in Honda or something like that. Before, unions were very centralized of that specific company. Now, because they're using members, they basically transforming the field and say, okay, so now we're gonna have a unionized that is gonna be in the entire United States to protect all the airline pilots. So now it's not a union of one airline company, it's basically anybody that is a pilot can be part of this union, regardless of where you work. So that's how unions are changing their approach to be able to stay afloat and to be able to get more members. So this basically concludes the presentation of the chapter. But what I want to do now is sharing the screen with you to show you this short video. And let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just gonna run it. It is very, very short, but I just want for you to see this.
Labor union membership in the United States has fallen steadily since the 1960s to 11%, its lowest point in 98 years. So, what are labor unions, and are they still useful? Well, American labor unions took off during the Industrial Revolution. The Civil War decimated the rural Southern economy, driving many young people to urban industrial jobs. Labor unions formed to unite workers so that they had some bargaining power about wages and work conditions. Historically, manual laborers were paid low wages and then cast aside when they could no longer do the work. However, when union membership exploded in the late 1930s, laborers were able to demand better treatment. Since then, many companies have been forced to strike a delicate balance between their relentless pursuit of profits and appeasing the unions. Today, with so few American workers belonging to a union, many argue that they should be done away with altogether. A 2008 report by the Heritage Foundation think tank argues that unions are obsessed with equal treatment of workers, to a point where individual merit is nullified and promotions are only based on seniority. The report also points out that many of the repetitive manufacturing jobs of yesteryear are now performed by machines. Modern jobs just aren't as suitable for unions. On the other hand, the Economic Policy Institute reports in 2012 that the decline of union membership is allowing employers to undercut low and middle wage workers. Their increasingly limited access to good jobs and economic security contributes to the growing gap between the rich and poor in America. So, how much power do existing labor unions have? Well, corporations have all but eliminated private sector unions. However, public sector jobs still have a 35% membership on average, especially workers in education, training, and library services. A 2013 Bureau of Labor Statistics report identifies a pay gap of nearly $4 per hour between union and non-union workers, which is over $7,000 more per year. Unions also have more access to employer health care and insurance benefits. For the workplaces that do have unions, members continue to benefit from higher wages and job security than their non-union counterparts, so they are still very useful in America. However, labor unions' constant decline in popularity calls into question the future of organized labor. The debate on the ultimate merits and necessity of American labor unions rages on. Learn more about the American economy by checking out this video here. This graph shows the number of jobs added year over year. The dip in jobs added from 2008 to 2010 represents the bursting of the housing bubble, the subprime mortgage.
This is one. The other one that I wanted to show you. Give me 1 second. Let me put it here. Let me close this one. And let me see if you can see this other screen. Can you see that one?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the last video that wanted to show you to conclude the class. This is actually talking more about why we think that nowadays we need unions, and it's a complement of what this young man in the other video was talking about, that people still have this conception that by being unionized you get better insurance, better salary, better benefits than people that do not have unions. So it's this one.
This is harvesting change. And there's a lot to talk about, but one basic theme that we've learned from the beginning is that you need to empower farm workers. So that's what I'm going to talk about, different ways that we've tried to do that throughout our history. But I would want to just take a moment, because oftentimes people will ask, well, how did you get engaged in this? Why are you a part of this farm worker movement? And I had my humble beginnings back in San Antonio, Texas. Our parish priest, Father Marvin Derfler, went down to the Rio Grande Valley to participate in one of the strikes that was taking place back then in the melon fields. And he went to join in a march, then he got arrested, and then he stayed in jail for a while, and came back and said, boy, this is exciting, this is great, what Cesar Chavez is doing. This is what nonviolence is all about. He was really living the gospel, is the way he told us. And so I, like so many others, when I went to college, was looking for ways to do something that would make a change, that would utilize my talents and the skills and the opportunities that I had that so many others didn't have. So I became one of those boycotters back in the 1960s and in the 70s. And then I had a chance to meet Richard Chavez, Caesar's brother. And upon graduating, he said, you know what, Arturo, come to work with us for 6 months. 6 months. That was the way they got us all in. 6 months became now 38 years. But I've never regretted a moment. But it really taught me the power of these boycotts. Because out of those boycotts, we got our first contracts ever for farm workers in the fields. We were able to deal with issues like pesticides, as we heard earlier today, to control the use of cancer and birth defect causing chemicals. We were able to do with the sexual harassment of women that takes place and the exploitation of women and other workers, to deal with issues like wages and benefits like a health plan and a health and safety committee, so that we control the use of things. So there was a lot of benefits that came as a result of involving. At one point, a national survey said 17 million Americans in the mid-70s were participating in our boycotts in some particular way. And it also won us the opportunity to have the first opportunity for farm workers to get the right to organize here in the United States. And that came in 1975, through a lot of sacrifice that farm workers made to be able to achieve that. And with that, then we began winning elections and so forth. But we also learned that by winning legislation, that wasn't going to be enough, that the contracts were important. So we had to figure out, and I'll tell a short story about a woman that kind of illustrates what even laws exist. Those laws oftentimes that are on the books are really not the laws that exist in the fields for the farm workers. 2005, we were able to get finally a heat stress law passed here in the state of California. But a young woman, Maria Isabel Vasquez Jimenez, 17-year-old Oaxacan immigrant, she was pregnant, was working in the wine grape fields in the northern San Joaquin Valley. She went to work that morning at 6 a.m. as usual, but by 10:30 a.m., the foremen still hadn't brought the workers water. And it was one of those days in May of 2008 that the temperature was extremely high. So by mid-afternoon, it was already 105 degrees plus there. They didn't get the rest that day they should have. They didn't have the shade like the law said. And as a result, she collapsed in the fields by mid-afternoon. And then, at that point, the foreman didn't do what he was supposed to do. Didn't call 911, didn't get her to emergency, didn't take her to a clinic. And so consequently, she stayed there in the fields, was eventually taken over to the van that had been sitting in that hot sun all day long. So it was like an oven when they got in there at the end of the workday. And finally, the foreman said, well, take her by the drugstore and get her some rubbing alcohol and put that on her and see what that does. Well, that didn't do anything to really relieve the pain and what was going on with Maria Isabel. So finally, her boyfriend, Florentino, convinced the driver that we got to take her to a clinic. Well, en route, the foreman calls the driver and says, make sure that he does not say anything about where Maria Isabel was working. Make sure that he says that he found her while she was exercising, while she was jogging. When they got to the clinic, they took her in. They found out that her body temperature was 108.8 degrees. You can just imagine what the inside of her body looked like at that point. Well, unfortunately, Maria Isabel died two days later. And it was another tragic story. In fact, just in this state alone, 16 farm workers have died since 2005 of heat stress. This year, we're investigating 3 more deaths. We know that we can't rely on the state. There's just not enough money the government's going to apply to the enforcement of laws. So that's why it becomes so important to get contracts, to get agreements with growers, to set up standards to ensure that they're going to abide by the law. So we're enforcing the law. So as a result of that now, we have strawberry workers here from one of the largest strawberry farms here in the state of California. We have the largest organic farmer here, Swanton Berry Farm. We have workers at Gallo Sonoma, the largest winery here in the state. We have now representation with one of the largest vegetable companies in the state. We have 75% of the mushroom industry here in the state of California under contract. And then we have the largest dairy west of the Mississippi in the state of Oregon under contract. So it gives us an opportunity to really set standards and set controls for farm workers. But again, farm workers today are continuing to want to organize. One election that recently happened was at Jamar Vineyards. And 2 of the 16 farm workers that I've mentioned that died of heat stress worked at that farm, and the workers said, you know, that's enough. They did a tremendous job of going out and organizing their company, and they got 80% of the workers to sign up saying they wanted a voice in the job, they wanted representation from the United Farm Workers. They held their election 7 days later, and there was so much intimidation, coercion, and threats that took place. The grower was telling them that if you vote for the union, we're going to pull out all the vineyards. If you vote for the union, we're going to tear down all the labor camps so you don't have any housing. If you vote for the union, you're not going to have a job this next year in the pruning season. So workers being without legal status here in this country felt intimidated and coerced, and they need a job. They can't function without a job. So consequently, when the election happened 7 days later, that 80% went down to 48%. We lost 32% in 7 days. If any politician would be in an election campaign like that and they lost that percentage, they knew something was wrong. They knew something happened that really changed the dynamics of what was taking place there and the enthusiasm of the workers. So as a result, we filed and we got the state to throw out the election. But they said also, look, you know, that there's no remedy here. The only thing we can do is that we can order a new election to take place. Well, we don't need the law to be able to do that. We have that right already. So we knew that we had to reform this law and look for other ways to make changes. So then we got together with the farm workers and we decided, you know what? We've got to introduce new legislation and put pressure so that we can have that right to organize. 5 times we introduced laws, 5 times the governors, Schwarzenegger and Jerry Brown during his first few months vetoed that law. Here recently, we decided, well, we got to do something more. So farm workers like Alejandro Nolasco that's here with us today, we decided to march. And we embarked on a 200-mile march that took us 13 days in August of this year. During the heat of the San Joaquin Valley, days were well over 100 degrees. And we went and we did what we know best. We went and involved the farm workers, and we went and involved people from all over the place to build that coalition that was necessary to bring about the pressure to legislators and make sure that the governor heard our voice. And so during the march, it was such an emotional experience, a very religious one, because people came from their homes, people joined with us, people fed us every single day. We didn't go to restaurants. We ate right there in the parks, in their homes, in their halls, in their church halls, and things like that. At night, they would take us to their homes to sleep. The next morning, they would join with us in marching or join with us in some religious service to mark and to prepare us for that day. But it really taught us, once again, the value of working with people and having faith and believing in people. And so consequently, there was so much emotion and so much excitement that by the time we got to Sacramento on September the 4th, we had over 5,000 people that joined us there. Farm workers from throughout the state came and were a part of that. And that impressed the governor. That showed the governor that we're not standing alone, that we have lots of people there that are supporting the work that we do, and he heard the voice of farm workers. So as a result, we got him to sign this past Sunday, SB 126, which talks about justice for farm workers. And as a result now, with that legislation, farm workers, when they go have an election, they can vote, and they know that if the grower violates the law, the state has a right to give us a contract immediately. So that is going to bring about significant change for farm workers and give them the encouragement and the hope that we can, and we do have a solution to really be able to change those conditions, to deal with the issues that they face every day, whether it's heat stress, pesticides, sexual harassment, wages, working conditions. Farm workers will have a solution to their problem and to their issue. So we are very honored again to be with you and to share with you just some of the tools that we've used throughout the last 50 years. Next year, we celebrate our 50th anniversary, and we're going to be enjoying and bringing together people to celebrate the history, but more important, talk about what we're doing now and today, and to work with folks and to ensure that we can really significantly continue to bring about solutions for changes for farm workers here in the United States and to ensure those victories that are necessary. If you're interested in being a part of our movement, if you're interested in being a part of that 50th anniversary, please go to our website, ufw.org, and become part of our free listserv so that you can also partake and join with farm workers in creating a better future for themselves, but also creating a better future for consumers here throughout the United States. Thank you very much. Si se puede, it can be done.
Well, even though this video was directly about farming, what I wanted to show you about it is what I was mentioning about it, about the power of the amount of people. The more members a union has, the stronger it is. And you can see, for example, here with what he was mentioning about it, that they went as far as being able to ask the government to enforce on laws and to enforce on policies. So basically, the idea is the recognition of the power that unions have. And what I was mentioning also about is that even though unions have been diminished and has been disappearing, there are actually certain jobs, certain positions that they're basically will remain. Like for example, in the healthcare field, nurses, doctors, all of that is a big union that controls everything that is hospitals, Actually, pilots, airline pilots is a big one. People that works in the assembly line, the car industry has a very strong union. And if I'm not mistaken, actually the car industry is a worldwide union. So even though they're unionized by countries, there is actually a large union that controls all of those subdivisions. And in the education field, even though it is not very strong in higher education, it is very strong in the K-12 system. Most of the, I'm not sure in your countries, that's actually something good that maybe you can search about it and share with the group. But here in the United States, what they call the teachers union is one of the strongest one in the country. Uh, I will say probably 85% of the teachers in the United States are unionized. So unfortunately, even though they have a strong presence, something that they have not been able to basically ever reach an agreement is salary. In the United States, teachers in the K-12 system don't get paid very well. So as a profession, it's a profession that has been decreasing in the long run. But for other benefits, they have really good benefits, they have really good services. But unfortunately, most of the school districts in the United States are controlled by the government, and government actually have policies that regulates the salary. So it is very difficult to argue that. It's easier for you to try to get a salary increase and reach some type of salary agreement if you work in the private sector than when you are in the government. So, but that's what I wanted to show you this, that it was more the aspect of the power of suggestion, the power of collective bargaining, the power of being a large group working towards one goal, that was the purpose of this video. So this basically concludes the presentation for today, but I wanted to find out if you have any questions whatsoever, or any comments, or you wanted to share something with us, anything that you want to add. Do you have any questions about anything that I mentioned, or it's everything okay?
Everything is okay by me.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So if you guys really don't have any questions about the topic, we're concluding this class a little bit earlier today. I know it's supposed to be 2 hours, but in several of the weeks we have gone over 2 hours, at even 2 hours and a half, and a little bit more. So in a long run, it balance out. What we have done so far. And I think the most important thing is to get the point across and to cover the point of what we need to review. So if you guys don't have any questions for today, we could actually give the class of today as a conclusion. If you guys have any questions about the class, pending assignments that you haven't submit, if you want to submit any of the assignments that have expired, uh, just send me a text message via WhatsApp. Tell me which one you want, and I'll open it. So I'll give you the opportunity to submit your assignments. Remember that each assignment has a deadline depending on the week that you are. But if you need to submit it late for any reason, just let me know. And if you cannot upload it, I would be more than happy to extend the time so you can upload it. Depending assignments that we have grading of the past week, I did everything today. Something that I was gonna ask you, please, is whenever you have a chance, review your grading history. Make sure that you see all the grades of all the assignments, the photos. If you don't see a grade for any of the assignments that you have submitted, please let me know. I don't know why sometimes I notice that I post the grades somewhere, and then when I go into summary or grade history, I do not see them. So I have to go back and put them again. So I do want to make sure that everything that you have submitted um, gets graded and get acknowledged, and you get some feedback from me. So if by any chance there is anything that you see that you don't see the grade, then let me know and I'll go back and I'll put it again. Sarah, you having a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, how are the unions able to operate efficiently in a in a world full of full trade agreements?
Uh-huh. So you're talking about you're asking about the process of the agreement or the purpose of the agreement?
The purpose of the agreement.
The purpose of the agreement is that, I'm gonna say it the way they say things here in the United States, is everybody on the same boat. So the main purpose of the agreement is that everybody gets the same thing and everybody gets the same benefits. One of the main reasons of the bargaining agreement, the number one purpose of the bargaining agreement, believe it or not, more than benefits, more than health insurance, more than everything, is salary. If you notice that at your workplace, of course, everybody gets paid differently. Of course, you don't pay, uh, you have a salary set up for the people that clean. You have a salary, an average salary for the secretaries and assistant directors and so forth and so forth and so on. But sometimes in the private sector, what happened is that all depends on the process of interview, especially in the private sector. How good you are to accept that job offer and bargaining that job offer for you to get a salary. So sometimes actually if you're very good, if you're very clever, if you're very good salesman, like they say, then basically sometimes you can walk in into a new position with a higher salary than some other employees within your same department are making. And there's people that have been there for 4 and 5 and 6 years. So this is a general example of what that union agreement protects. So they basically say, regardless of how good this person is, if this is the position, this is the salary standard, this is the salary average, and this is how at this salary people will start. Then after 3 months, you can do a review and you can increase this much and this much. So they try to be not as discriminatory in certain services, and at the same time to give the opportunity to everybody to be able to reach those services as well, because sometimes people don't speak up, sometimes people don't ask for salary increases, sometimes people don't do a lot of things because that's their personality. They're very shy, they're very humble, they don't like to fight, they don't like confrontation, they don't like anything. But that's what the union is there for. So the union fights for those rights. The union fights for those people that they think that they don't have a voice, because everybody does. Everybody can go to a supervisor and say, hey, what do I need to do in order to request a review of my position? What do I need to do in order to maybe have considered for salary increase? In the private sector, of course. Sometimes in the public sector, the whole process works differently. So the main purpose of that is, to be honest with you, is equality. The bottom line, regardless of what they're fighting for, is equality. I have the right to have this because of this reason. So that's kind of like the main purpose of the contract. And like I say, companies, for example, going back to the same companies, but they're being used as an example. Like for example, companies like Google, companies like Amazon, companies like Apple, these new companies, these new trending cutting edge companies, a lot of these companies The employees might have the amount of employees, of headcount to be part of the unions. But sometimes the employees don't even think about it because the company offers them such a great amount of services. Even when we were talking in one of the assignments about well-being, there are companies that have gyms and gym memberships and do this and do that and travel discounts and all of these promotions and excellent health insurance and all of that, and on top of that, they pay well. So the employees don't see the need for that. But in the companies that are not like that, that's the main purpose of the agreement, to create some level of equality or whatever it is they're asking for. Any other questions or any other information that I can clarify? So,
Sorry, Miss, for interrupting. I wanted to ask about the university.
yeah.
General questions about the university. Is it okay to ask you, or should I
Yes.
ask the students up here?
What question do you have? Because I don't know if as a faculty I might have the answer or if it's something that you will need to talk to Sarah about it.
Okay, so when you Google Windsor University,
Uh-huh.
the first thing that comes up is another Windsor University. I mean, is there another university that's with the same name
Yes,
and
yes,
the same
yes.
country?
That has been one of our marketing issues, and it's something that they are working on with Google and the search different search engines, because actually universities can have the same name. They could be more than one university with the same name. So that's when universities as a corporation, as a company, they start trying to stand out, like different websites, different universities, different logos, different colors, and different like for example, let's say for example, Windsor University. One university can have a website that is called wu.edu, Windsor University.edu, and then the other university that has uh, the same name can agree to an internet website that is called windsoru.edu. So when they have different names, they actually create, they try to stand themselves out that way, with different colors, different logos, different websites. Like, for example, if you want to look for, I know what you're talking about because that happens to me before. That I go and I put wins. I'm actually doing it right now. Uh, like for example, if I put just Windsor University, I believe it's a university from Canada that comes out. So something, if you want to look for our website directly, if you want to look for our university, the university right now, the direct website of the university is windsoruniversity.us. So don't put edu at the end, put us at the end. Because if you put edu, it basically doesn't exist. The website doesn't exist. If you put windsoruniversity.edu, it doesn't exist. And if you do a regular search, most of the time the one that comes out is the Canadian university, because that has happened to me too. So just remember that for us so far, what you do at the end, if you go windsoruniversity.us, it will take you directly to the university website. But the short answer of the question is yes. Universities can have the same name, and even within the same country, that actually can even have the same name. So when they decide the same name and the Department of Education approves it, that's when the university has to be very creative in marketing to make sure that the people that are looking for certain university doesn't go to the other university. Any other question?
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. So just remember that at the end, if you go Windsor University, just put windsoruniversity.us instead of edu. But like I say, if you do not have any more question, we're basically going to give the presentation. Today's class as concluded. I'm gonna stop the recording now. As always, I want to thank you for attending the class, for listening to me, for asking questions and participating. It is really, really appreciated because that's when we engage in additional learning.
Thank you.